Coming up next, virtual production and live events discussing innovation, challenges, and opportunities. Please welcome to the stage Danilda Martinez, Director of Programs and Outreach at #GalsandGear, and her guests, Rebecca Dinar, Director of Communication at Knight Foundation, Christy Reed, Director of Studio Sales at View, and Kathy Richards Ingram, Audio-Visual Systems Engineer at Avalara.
Hello, hello. Thank you, everyone, for being here. We are so excited to have this exciting and energizing conversation about creating events that are more engaging for both in-house audiences and remote or virtual audiences. And that applies to many areas of the industry. And so we have a wonderful panel here. We've got Christy from View. You want to tell us what you do over at View?
Yeah, I'm executive producer at View Technologies. We started out as a creative video agency during the pandemic, got into ICVFX, which is in-camera visual effects, virtual production, doing commercial work. And now we are stepping into the experiential space, activations, live events.
Fantastic, thank you. And then we have Kathy from Avalara.
Hi, I'm Kathy. I am the systems engineer at Avalara. We're a taxation software company, but for me, I'm on the conferencing side, so I have ownership of all conference rooms, live meeting support, virtual meetings, globally.
Fantastic, welcome. And we have Rebecca Dinar from the Knight Foundation.
Good afternoon, everyone. Over at the Knight Foundation, we do a lot of things. I'm in-house comms, working on creative production, mega events, whatever, news, any aspect of comms.
That's fantastic. Thank you for joining us. So a little bit about Gals and Gear. One of the things that we like to do is create what we call tequity in the industry. We want to represent women who are experts in their field and showcase their knowledge, as well as create opportunities for networking, mentorship, and growth. I'm Danilda Martinez, and that's one of the things that we are here to do is represent ladies. So thank you, Avixia, for having us. One of the wonderful things about this panel and this group of women is that we are a very eclectic group on purpose. So as we talk about and we create spaces that are integrative, that are immersive and engaging, we also are bringing in audiences from so many different ways. And I really want each of you to kind of share a little bit about what a virtual or remote or live experience is from the perspective that you have in your role at your company.
I came from the live AV background for 14 years, was an audio engineer and then technical director, and very different world than the commercial production. And so when I crossed over and became a producer in commercial production, I thought, man, the luxury of just being able to pause and do things over and over and over from the live event world, they don't know how good they have it. But then also being able to bring the speed of how we execute live into the commercial space. And now I'm able to bring to the company, as we're pivoting back towards enabling live content generation, kind of what it is to work under pressure in the live, and you kind of get one shot.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure to get that on one shot, especially after having to combine so many moving parts. What about you? What is a live and remote experience from your end as an engineer?
So from the corporate event, from the corporate side, at the moment we're seeing mostly web meetings, right? It's a Zoom, it's a Teams meeting. We have our room set up for mostly web meetings, but we also see that we have live, combining live broadcast alongside a Zoom meeting, taking the Zoom feed into a live broadcast for all hands, for our chat with our CEO. So that there's a lot of just static content that's being shared.
A lot of the 16:9 squares, right?
Yes, definitely.
What about you, Rebecca? You have experience producing global events on multi-platform experiences. What about you?
So I spend a lot of time thinking about content and story and generating emotion. These days, I'm also focused on eyeballs. I want to make sure that we have the attendance we need to make a lot of the production worth its value, and that's filling a room as well as building that very hard to get audience online.
So we have this intersectionality here of different types of parts of the industry. We have corporate, we've got I'm going to call you Hollywood. And then we've got the more traditional live events and content marketing teams. Each one of you has challenges that you have to overcome. And I want to come to you, Kathy, as my AV integrator on the set. What is one of the major challenges that you face when you're trying to kind of upscale or trying to create a functional and an engaging environment for your audience, which is your in-house?
Well, I think right now we're still struggling with the question of whether people are coming back to the office, right? We're still in a hybrid workforce where sometimes one executive says, oh no, everyone's doing great, stay home, and the other one wants the community, wants the culture back, wants us in the office, but there's no full decision. So I think right now we're still in that space where there will always be someone remote. There will always be a remote participant that has to be taken care of and watched. So when we were thinking about our AV refresh, we were really thinking about how do we create an equitable experience for the person at home so that they don't feel left out of the conversation, because a lot of times you see the big, large table, you barely see who's in the room, and then you have faces on the screen, and the people at the table are talking to each other. So we were trying to solve for that by using multi-stream, by using cameras that are voice tracking, to be able to really zero in on people in the room so that the people at home felt like they could interject and be part of that conversation. So that was one of our challenges. And then for our engineering department, there's some departments that usually really collaborate with each other, so we tried to implement digital whiteboards and writable surfaces and things like that that people can share with each other easily and allow others to come into the space and collaborate. Whether technology is being used in that way is still, it's still up for grabs.
So for those that don't know about your company, are you guys a regional office, national? Tell me a little bit about the size.
Yeah, we are we're based in Seattle. That's where our headquarters is, but we also have offices around the world. So we have one in Durham, we're in India, we're in Brighton, UK, we're in many others. So
Okay.
yeah.
So multiple time zones, multiple continents.
Yes. So we're trying to solve, as the lone AV person with my manager, we are trying to solve for how do we support all large meetings that are spanning all of these time zones, and then getting our tier one techs to take ownership of them and find them to be as important as I think they are.
Yeah.
So I can't be their hand. I can't make them do things. I can only instruct and.
Yeah. And I think that's something that a lot of us in the audience can relate to, the ability to make everyone, no matter what time zone they're in, feel welcome, feel engaged, and still participate in a way that is seamless. That's why the technology is so key. But sometimes the technology, as well as having the right people on the team, is just such a pull on your budget. How do you navigate that? She said, what budget?
That's great.
You didn't
question.
see that. You didn't.
I mean, I didn't see that one coming. But I think it's still a challenge, right? You have to talk to the right people. You have to know how your users want to use the technology. What are they trying to get across? How are they working together? How are they collaborating? Talk to your workplace experience team. What is the culture that you're trying to maintain or infuse back into the company? So unless like everyone has to be working together and in conversation and not expecting one to drive the other and expect them to be faster than they're going.
Yeah. And it's always hard to plan for technology a year in advance, because by the time you get that fiscal year coming around, you end up with the budget for last year's tech, and you want next year's tech, right?
Yeah.
So Rebecca, my next question is for you. I'm curious about, in your experience as a producer of large events and also as a marketing director, what advice do you have for someone like Kathy, or for those of us in the audience as well, that need to approach the big picture?
So an idea for content or a program seems to be able to come from anywhere. The execs have these big ideas of what they want to do, and then we have to figure out how it's going to roll down, and we're going to bring everybody along. I could say one of the things we've found, if we have budget for, is to have a single person responsible for putting together a separate deck that would allow anyone to pick up the piece to make sure nothing falls through the cracks. So if we're suddenly bringing in an audio team or a different type of content production team, we want that person to be able to run quickly and have all the little details at their fingertips. So that's one little trick we've used.
So what I'm hearing you say is that communication at all levels of an organization is important, right?
We can't have everyone sit in every meeting, and we all know if you're not in the meeting, you miss some key pieces of information that would allow you to do your job. So assigning someone the role of stringing those bits of information together seems to be really helpful.
I love how practical that advice is. Let me know something along the lines of your experience in connecting the need to the strategy of the brand so that we can, as AV professionals, position our ask in a proper way.
So one of the things I've found in and outside of agency is that some folks are really focused on content production. Some folks are really focused on, bringing everything to life. It's not always clear what the ultimate goal is of what you're trying to achieve. So for one live event, I was in one situation where we spent a lot of time bringing the content to life, and it won awards, but we didn't fill the room. Is that okay? It actually might be okay. It depends on what the goals are of your client. Some of them just want to fill the room, and they're not so focused on bringing that content to life. So understanding ultimately what your ROI is can help make sure that you're delivering.
And so in your opinion, when you come across either a client or a stakeholder who is making that decision, but they don't quite see which audience is the most important, either the virtual or the in-house, how do you help guide them to figure that out?
I've never worked for a client that says, I think content's important or audience is important. Usually they're trying to make money. Sometimes they're trying to move legislation. Sometimes they're trying to demonstrate a certain amount of power, right? So you need to understand what exactly they're trying to achieve and then offer them opportunities to meet those goals.
Okay, so that's something that I know when we were talking, you mentioned that success breeds success, right? And so sometimes tying the numbers to the big ticket item, to the new system that you want to install is not always comparing apples to apples when you're talking to key stakeholders. At times, you need to be able to translate and speak the language of ROI to them. And even then, you may only get a piece of the pie. So what do you mean by success breeds success?
So it's very hard to convince your top stakeholders or your clients what you see as their path to success. So I'll give a concrete example of that.
Yes.
Okay, so they're asking you to put together a huge production or a huge event, and you're given a certain amount of budget where you understand you won't be able to fully satisfy a hybrid version of that for your online audience.
Okay.
So you have to make a choice of which one you're going to succeed at or not. They don't want to spend for both. So, and you understand that in order to get them to buy in, it might be for the next one. So you find a little way to find success to do both, and then you can show them that you won, and then it makes it better the next time around. Not sure if that fully completed a thought.
No, I think it does, because in the world of live events that you produce, that's the perfect way to approach it. That might translate for Kathy as, hey, perhaps we don't have enough to outfit all of the conference rooms with the newest techs, but let's work on just the executive suites for now, right? And
Yeah, definitely. I think you just have to start choosing like when, where, who's in office, how are they using it, and then prioritize.
Yeah, and one thing that I learned during my AV career was, documentation is key, right? When you start to do those small case studies and you miss the opportunity to document the small successes like Rebecca was talking about, you miss a very, very key opportunity to be able to communicate the weight and the value of the new tech that you're bringing in. So that when you do come to something like InfoComm and you see all the latest and greatest bells and whistles, the newest connector, the newest screen, the newest display, and you want to convey this is what we need for our organization, if you haven't been able to create the sell because you haven't connected it to the big picture, then how can you start to scale your operation? And unfortunately, maybe when we signed up for this, that's not what we went into, but that's part of that's got to be in our tool belt now. I know you have something to chime
Yeah,
in.
I can remember as a technical director, I would take notes live in the show. And yes, you're taking, this mic failed, this thing didn't work right, but I was also reading the room and taking notes nothing is as impactful as like when you're right there in the moment. So being able to capture that right there and then bring it to the table for the next budget planning meeting and say, this is why it's worth spending the money here, because this elicited this reaction, this response, this revenue. So.
Did you have something, Rebecca?
No.
It's like that pain point, you know, it's right when the cut happens, that's when you need to quickly say, hey, you know, we didn't like how that happened, let's plan for avoiding this. But it's ultimately the audience engagement factor. You know, it's so easy to engage with my audience here in-house because we see you, we see the eyeballs on us. But for those that would be joining through some creative means, whether it's through a virtual experience because you've designed it on a headset for them to fully immerse themselves in, because you had the foresight to plan for it and budget for it, and you convinced all of your stakeholders to invest in the tech and the team. That's an ideal world, right? Okay, I'm going too far.
I think we're in something that we're calling the attention economy.
Yes.
Where the creative and the budget and the ideas, it's only going to get you so far if you can't get those eyeballs. The more bells and whistles we have, the more distractions there are. And each body has a cost. So you just want to make sure that your stakeholders understand what those costs are.
Yeah. And they should be able to understand whether those eyeballs are more valuable virtually or in person for them. And you are part of the ecosystem of bringing that attention, that interaction with either the brand or the company or the meeting or whatever it is. And so I started the session with asking everyone to kind of define a little bit of what a live or hybrid or virtual event is from where they sit, because the truth is that there's so many of us over here doing different things, and what is virtual for one company is not necessarily virtual or hybrid for another. And so every solution is not a one-size-fits-all, right? But in that instance as well, every integration is not long-lasting. Sometimes it's a short installation, right? I know that at View, you guys are talking about some creative uses of doing some VR panels that are not like on events and studios, right? Or like LED panels, I'm sorry. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so we're going beyond commercial production. We've installed 22 studios in the US and the UK and Canada. And then now we're getting into the activation world and having some talks with companies about who, for the in-person audience, they want the experience to start at the door. And how can we use interactive technology, AI, LED, all of that combined. And really what we're seeing is the power of Unreal Engine and where that's headed and how that can be combined with AI to get the experience from the start. And for a hybrid audience, it may be the experience starts months before with how we engage with them with content and pull them in to kind of tempt them with the experience and attending.
I'm curious, with a show of hands, how many of you have started and embarked on creating a live event and supporting a live event experience? Just, I know it's an obvious question. How many of you have walked into that live event experience and been told within a short amount of time to actual go time and live time that it's now a virtual event? We want to bring an online audience. Let me see them really high. Okay. And out of those, raise your hand if you would have loved the opportunity to plan it differently. And did you take the moment to communicate that after the event? Yeah? Yeah. And how was it received? Good. Oh, you guys work for good. I've got some yeses and some nos. That's a process thing for me. I think that we're talking about the workflow. It's not just the technology that's evolving, right? It's not just the idea of what is hybrid, what is virtual, what's live, whether it's a concert or whether it's a conference. Well, a conference room and the meeting in there, but the process of creating and planning for an event is going from traditional, on my end as an AV person, from traditional production to sometimes involving elements of a world that I've never been a part of, like maybe marketing, or which is something I have been a part of, but maybe content creation, or maybe even VR. So how can I approach this creatively early on and plan for success?
I think the key is what we've been calling co-creation. So it's not that we're coming up with product for them, it's that we're figuring a way to listen to what's going on. So if you're engaging with people in terms of getting those eyeballs focused on your virtual or live event, how are you also learning from them, making them part of the process? Because the more you can bring them in, the more likely they are to stay or deepen their engagement or buy more of the things or whatever your ROI is. So I think co-creation is key.
And when you say co-creation, can you give me an example?
Sure. It could, even if it's a poll, what do you think of this? Or you can do A, B, C testing, put out different pieces of content and see how people respond to it. So you get information about what your audience is really prioritizing or focusing. Use that then to build your next piece of content and help that form whatever their experience is when they show up.
Okay. And go ahead.
I would like to add to that it would be great to have insight beforehand for AV as well, because sometimes content comes and they have all these grandiose ideas of what the room could do, and it is not possible. And so like having to pivot and then not give them the experience that they wanted to have is frustrating for both sides. So I think bringing technology into it early on, knowing what your spaces can do, and then how to work together to fit it in.
It also would require you to be agile in response. So we have that problem too, where we get this great piece of audience insight 2 months before an event, but nobody knows what to do with it because we've already booked this and booked that, and the budget to make a change would mean we can't even use it. So you have to also plan to be agile enough in the experience to respond to what you've learned. Yeah. That would mean a lot for AV, I imagine.
Yes, it would.
I would internally within our company, it's very important, especially in our world of commercial shooting, that the R&D team, the sales team, the marketing team, they're all collaborating from the beginning together. So we all become creators together, and that way we can bounce things off of each other and respond real time. Hey, I don't know if we can pull that off, and then the other can challenge, and we can work together to probably create better content than we could individually. But if you're working not internally within your own company, but developing these relationships, the more relational you can be with your end client and let them bring you into the ideation stage. And the minute that you move away from just an AV solutions provider to a consultant and creator with them, the more that you can kind of steer the conversation as well and help them lean into what works right now, and then ideate for the future of where you know technology is heading for next year. And so I would just say encourage you to form that relationship with your client to where you're not just on the end of the conversation, but they bring you in day one.
Yeah, and that works for in-house teams as well. Having that co-creation mentality, or even as the analogy of being an in-house consultant, the more expertise that you're able to show that you bring to the table with creating this environment through the technology that you've been afforded in your department, in your team, and the easier that it becomes for that buy-in to happen and for that symbiotic relationship between the content side, because at the end of the day, when we support live events, we are supporting content, whether it exists online or in person.
I just want to call out, that is really hard to do.
It is, absolutely.
You just said it like you should just do it, but I know it's hard to do.
so much.
Yeah.
It's hard to get that trust, and it's hard to demonstrate value, and that's where I think that early small wins are helpful. I just wanted to call it out as tough stuff, very hard to do.
No, and that's why the small wins are key. You know, not just glazing over that small win that you had, that great install and the wonderful audience reaction. That's important, and that goes back to the process and method of documentation to say that what you're bringing to the table is 100% worth the investment in budgetary resources or human resources as well, and talent.
Yeah, I would say it is the small wins, and whether it's an internal or external, when we're helping kind of save the day, when they're in a tight bind and you can come in and just say, don't worry, I got this, that starts to earn the trust. My old boss used to call it the trust bank, and you just want to make small deposits all the time.
I love that, the trust bank. I'm going to use that
Trust
one.
bank, I love it. So I have a question for you, Christy. You talked about ICVFX, and I think can you explain what that is and the process of pre-production and production to make use of it in a live setting, what that looks like for you?
Yeah, so traditional content creation, you're either shooting things on a green screen, you're shooting things on location, creating content, showing that at your live event. With ICVFX, it kind of blends both worlds of on-set and green screen. So you have the power of looking like I'm sorry.
What's the ICVFX?
Oh, I'm sorry, in-camera visual effects.
Thank you.
So with green screen, you don't see what's going on behind you. The actor, the talent, they're imagining what's going on. And then in post, you're going to put it all together. On location, like here, it's clear, everything's real. So this is a blend of the two, where some of it's digital, but instead of having to imagine, and it's put together in post, the image is real, just like on this screen, and everything's captured in camera. And the way it blends together with camera tracking, we use Unreal Engine, the game engine, you can use Disguise, there's some other things out there. It looks very plausibly like you're really on location there. And so it helps bring everybody together, and you're imagining it look blue, and I'm imagining it look red. And so in the live event world, we're seeing that application come to fruition in real time, without lag, without delay, and it's just getting there faster and faster. And so the planning on the content creation side, it used to be most of your time was spent in post. So you're like, oh, we'll fix it in post, we'll fix it in post. So you could have a quick planning time and then a long end time to fix it all. Right. Now we're flipping it. So you need a little bit more runway in planning, and you're going to kind of plan for the unknown as well and create some extra content, because it's faster to create now. And do all of that so that in the end, your turnaround time is really quick, or in a live scenario, you can just change things on the fly, no problem.
That's amazing. I mean, you did mention about how we see this already in sports, right? When your TV audience sees the...
like the line on the field.
Right, the line on the field. I'm such a sports person. Yay, sports.
Yeah.
And so I loved how you talked about this being like a layered approach of creating a completely different piece of content for your online audience. And we had discussed a little bit prior to coming on stage how important it is to get buy-in from your end user as well, and to understand where they're coming from, because you can't push too hard, right? So, for example, in the corporate setting, we all know that feeling of, I've pushed too hard, they don't want to use this new amazing thing that I just put up. But it is possible to still kind of push just enough without getting too much resistance. How do you approach that, Kathy?
Lots of training, just offering training to the users and just allowing them to guide their experience as well. I think people are scared of new technology. They're scared of, like, if it doesn't look like what they're used to, or the button's in a different place, somehow they don't know that they can push join and join a meeting. So you have to, like, course them. Okay, you can do this wirelessly. You don't need an HDMI cable. You can just share wirelessly through the screen. Or here's your meeting. You booked it through the calendar. You can just hit join. Like, it's teaching them to not be scared of the technology and really allowing for questions and having great IT support too, like teaching them how to troubleshoot things. So if someone walks into the room and one of the monitors is off or the TVs is off, what do? They usually panic. But if someone can just go in, calmly reset it, and then allow them to know where to call, like who can come and support you.
So training is key. You need to have a good understanding of your end users' expectations and capabilities, right?
100%.
Yeah. So real quick, I'd love to turn to you guys and see if you have any questions or ideas that you want to share. I'd love to involve my audience and hear a little bit about what you're thinking so far. I had asked you guys if you've been asked to add an online component, kind of like an afterthought. And I'm curious, I want to invite you to participate in the conversation. Have there been any success stories out of those moments? If you want to share, I'd love to hear that. And if not, hold your question, have a question ready for us, because I'll come back for a Q&A. Anybody thinking that they'd like to share, be a part of our conversation? Going once, going twice. I know it's a bold move. Okay, cool. So I really am enjoying this idea of thinking of not just the end product as a process that we have to rethink, right? But I really want to understand, how is it possible for us to move our audiences into accepting this new tech? From your perspective, when there's so much resistance? And I defer to you guys, the experts, right now, because I'm really curious about this idea that we are wanting to give the best experience possible.
Maybe I'm going to say something a little bit controversial. I don't think that we always should.
Tell me why.
I think that, I'm just in a live conversation with my team at the Knight Foundation over an event that maybe we shouldn't do anything virtual. If we can't commit to what that experience is going to be, if we can't identify exactly what audience we want to get, if we're not feeling it, why not just make it a live event? If we're not, there are a lot of statistics out there about adaptation of new technology for different age groups. So you're already predisposed to a group that it's probably unlikely to get it anyway if you're at a certain age. Just say no and explain the cost. So in support on comms, I want to be able to say, look, based on what you're telling me you're wanting, I'm going to say virtual is a bad idea. New tech's a bad idea. Let's just go with this. What's funny is you often get wait a minute, what? I want to do that too, because there's the shiny ball syndrome. They want to go after the shiny ball. You say, okay, well, if that's what you're wanting, here's what it's going to cost, and here's what it means.
Yeah.
So sometimes you just have to follow the conversation.
That's part of the education too, part of your end client education, and understanding the different points of accessibility that you're giving your audience experience.
Yeah, that wouldn't be an option in some cases for us because we have teams all across the world, so we would always have to think about a virtual component to be able to bring teams together. So then you sit with, do you become a live, do you do something that's a live broadcast? Do you have a web meeting? Do you have a combination of the two things?
But I think it's the same question, it's just a different threshold. So you're like, so let me get this straight, another Zoom? Or let me get this straight, do you want people to leave feeling what? Excited to go sell a product? Do you want them to feel proud to be part of this company? Or should we just let their faces show up? So it's a similar question, it's just a different threshold, I think.
We can all relate to having to have that discussion. But I understand what Kathy's saying to that point, because if your team is remote, if you have to provide this service, then the question is less, do I, but how, right? And that's why all these solutions and all these different flavors are so important to understand and to be able to position them in a way that communicates that feeling that whoever's asking you for this thing is after. And so that's really where kind of a nuanced approach is so important. I'm curious about hold on, I have here. The process of this iterative process that you started talking about earlier with the ICVFX, but bringing that onto a stage. Is it too far-fetched to ask to have some component of virtual production in a live event?
No, not at all. If you've been to Universal, Born Experience is a really great example of that that's happening right now. And then where things are headed between camera tracking, motion tracking, AR, VR experience, and so blending what can happen in the room and bring in a virtual audience and do things. It's happening now in ways, and it's just going further. So what I'm seeing as camera tracking and motion tracking is getting better, the ability to do everything live and then have the room and the environment react with your audience is just getting stronger and faster. Being able to dynamically change what's going on based on audience response, those kinds of things. And so that's, it's kind of that content creation, letting them feel like they're having input into the live experience and their presence there matters. That's where the power is, I think, in all of this.
What kind of planning does that take for those that maybe want to think about integrating LED panels and motion tracking into their actual facility? What's the type of solution that can be accessible for an entry-level kind of organization? So I'm a corporate organization, and I am looking for creating a studio space, but I want to make sure that I have the ability to create virtual experiences so that I can kind of navigate and play as a new and shiny toy. What can you give me?
we're having conversations and seeing a lot where this is being adopted inside corporations, like in their headquarters or in hotels, to where this technology is easily accessible. I know View as a company, we're working towards, with our technology partners, getting costs down so that there's entry-level packages where we can just bring in a studio instead of in the millions and the 100,000s, that you can just have this and you don't have to worry about the technologies. It's there, it works, you can set it up in multi-site, they all talk to each other. And so that's where we're pushing, so that you don't have to be Hollywood level to adopt this kind of technology. And so we come in kind of at the consultancy stage. Again, it goes back to bring us in at the idea stage and let us concept with you.
I just made that really executive question, right? I want this cool, shiny new thing. What am I going to do with it, right? So I think it's important that we're approaching this from the why perspective of why is this tech necessary? Do I need to change where the button is and get the new shiny button where the old one used to be or not, right? Sometimes the answer is yes, and we have to push through, and sometimes the answer is no. But when you're talking about implementing such a robust solution and such a new tech that is still in its early stages of implementation, there's such a huge learning curve. So what are the skills and what are the types of team members that we need on our team, on our crew, in our companies? What do we need to make successful production of a blended event happen? You can take it.
I would say right now we're in a unique time and space where we're at this emerging technology. We're still all early adopters. And so, companies like us, we need people to learn to adopt the technology so that we can do more content. Don't tell my boss that I said this, but take advantage of that. Studios like us, companies, we want you to come in and learn. We're doing demos. We're letting you come in and have R&D days. Don't be afraid to ask. It's a very collaborative space right now when it comes to LED volume stages, LED technology, AI. We're in the beta stage, and we need users to be able to figure out the bugs, right? So it's the greatest opportunity to learn at the moment, and learn for very cheap, if not free, in a lot of cases.
She said free people. Come talk to her afterwards.
I don't think, we're not yet at a place where you can create a hybrid event where those experiences are going to be fully connected or the same. Like, it's just not, I just don't think we are there yet. The technology hasn't caught up, and there's just something about being in a room with people that you're not going to get if you're not in that room. I think until we've perfected the technology you're talking about, it's all just a hacking in the woods exercise. It's a trial and try it and figure it out and do a little bit better next time.
I think even if the technology caught up, like in a use case where we're in a corporation, content that is usually being shared is pretty static. It's like, here's some spreadsheets and here's some PowerPoints with some charts and graphs. So I am curious. I'm really excited by all of this new technology and the ability to be able to, I can envision like some kind of AR situation where you can see the graphs live, you can work on your product, you have 3D imaging where you can like have a vision around it. But how do you get users along with you? Like, what have you seen? I'm just very curious because I would love to be able to implement this, but I don't want to be resistant, be like, I don't see this happening.
Wait, so your team is not too tech savvy? Is that what you're saying?
I am my team.
Got it. You're talking about people that are struggling right now? Okay.
I'm talking about users.
I think Rebecca
struggling.
can relate.
It's just a therapy. It's just a little therapy session right now.
Yes, please.
I want to ask you guys a couple quick questions. When we are talking about upskilling and learning and training, R&D, all of this, if you could talk to your younger self and say, hey, Rebecca, Kathy, Christy, you really need to work on this skill so that you could be ahead of the curve in 2023. What's the thing that you would tell your younger self?
I would say to be kinder to yourself, to be honest. It's not, I don't know if it's a practical skill you're talking about for the business, but in the events world or even in my comms world, like, I don't sleep that much. So I think just being kinder to yourself is probably good advice no matter what.
Thank you.
I would say that you don't need to know as much as you think you do. Don't be afraid to just try things, and you don't have to go take every single certification, every single class just to feel like I can show up in a room and have a conversation. Like sometimes you just got to jump and trust yourself.
Jump in and trust yourself. That's good advice. What about you? What's a skill that maybe we need to get into the world of virtual production for live events? Well, you can answer the first question because I just threw you off.
With the first question of my younger self, I was so focused on I wanted to be the best live engineer, and I focused so much on one skill. And now, as an executive producer, I really need to understand the pain of all my team so that I can plan and anticipate for them. And my job now is to anticipate the unknowns and be ready to react. But so I would tell my younger self, shadow, understand every department you're working with, whether that's your expertise or not, so you can at least know when I make this decision, this is how it's going to impact them. This is what it's going to feel like. And it just makes you a better leader and a better producer. On the virtual production side, I would say get into Unreal Engine and get into AI. Don't be scared of it. They're open source and free right now. And just play around. You can't break anything. But that's where things are headed, especially when it comes to content creation and being able to do things quickly. I know our company is stepping into the software side, and where we're headed, when you talk about the end users and how do you do it, you need to make it simple. And so eventually it's going to be, you're just going to talk into your mic on your phone or in the computer, and your concept art is just going to come from your spoken word and telling the AI, like, this is what I want to do.
Generative AI is what's making the splash.
So, don't be scared of it. Learn how to use it.
So no fear, trust yourself, and jump in even if you don't have all the answers.
Yep.
Be quick to pivot. I feel like that's a really good takeaway, right? Are there any audience questions? Anyone want to ask one of our ladies anything? We have a question over here in the front row. Chance is going to bring it over to you. Or Veronica. Sneak attack.
Sure. Yeah, my name is Derek Davis. Thank you. You hit on a point that I'm really interested in. I'm from the music industry originally, and when Napster came out, I saw our industry collapse, and it's never come back. And I wonder what AI is going to do for us as well. I'm a former technologist at Microsoft Research, and when I knew this was coming, but when I see Bill Gates stand up and say, well, I didn't think that it was going to destroy so many artists' jobs so fast, and I didn't think it was going to destroy so many C-level jobs so fast, and they tell us how many people's jobs it's going to destroy. It's really awesome to have rapid art, but what is the cost? I mean, and you were talking about reaching to the people and like how do they adopt it? Like how's that gonna? How is a non-human created piece of art really gonna connect with a person? Because a person uses their emotions and their feelings in a way that AI can never do. So I mean, like if you have any concepts on that, just because that's one of those things. Like we watch our marketing team disappear, our graphic designer goes, there goes our artist. What is that going to mean for us in the future?
You want to take it?
Yeah.
Go.
Or do you want? How we're using it right now and where we're seeing the benefit is in the conceptual stage. So it's not replacing the end content, but it's helping you express yourself, especially for our clients that they know what they want or they know what they don't want, but they don't know how to articulate it. And so the AI is helping bridge the gap from the non-creatives to the creatives to get us on the same page faster, and then just get quicker in the concepting. Then we can spend more time in the iteration to the final design.
So during the previous cycle. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say that I feel like you asked a question that's probably bigger than all of us.
Of course.
It's a way bigger question. And it's one I asked myself that question as well. I heard something very smart. I didn't say it, but I'll repeat it to you. And that is, I think we've overestimated intelligence. And intelligence will never be more important than enthusiasm and creativity. And if you think about it like that, and you see AI as a tool, it only forces us to reach higher on the creative and enthusiastic side.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Thank you. And that's about all the time we have today. So I just want to thank everyone for being here. We are Gals in Gear, and I especially want to thank Avixa for having us. I hope everyone has a great day. Thank you.